Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm Mansa Musa, co-hosting with Eddie Conway. First, let me acknowledge a monumental event that took place yesterday. Sudiadia Coli was finally released. Sudiadia Coli was a political prisoner. His co-defendants is Joanne Chesmeyer and Zayd, that was killed or assassinated on the highway in New Jersey. Sudiadia Coli served almost a half a decade. He's finally home with his family. And this is the result of the continued support around political prisoners and prisoners of war. Today, we have a remarkable guest with us to talk about the issues that's dealing with women that are incarcerated and family reunification. The Justice Department knows that 5 million children have family members that are incarcerated. So here to join me to talk about family reunification, the prison industrial complex impact on the families, is Deborah. Deborah, welcome to Rattling the Bars. Introduce yourself to the Rattling the Bars viewers.
Hi there, I'm Debra Bennet-Austin. I am formerly incarcerated. I did 19 years in the Florida Department of Corrections, and I've been home for 4 years. I am a co-founder, executive director of Change Comes Now, where we are formerly incarcerated women and we advocate for the currently incarcerated women in the state of Florida.
All right, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about family reunification and the prison industrial complex impact on it and how it affects women in particular. We recognize that men get most of the attention when it comes to reentry, when it comes to program services while they're incarcerated, and when it comes to program services upon their release. Can you tell the Rattling the Bar audience, how much time did you serve prior to being released?
19 years.
Are you a mother or parent?
I'm a mother. I'm a mom and a grandmother.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 children.
And how many grandchildren?
3.
And when you was incarcerated, what was your children's age prior to going in?
When I was arrested, my son was 5 and my daughter was 9.
Okay, and serving, you served 19 years, and so you witnessed and also experienced the problem and the stress that's associated with being a mother incarcerated and trying to raise your children or maintain a relationship with your children. So can you speak on this from a personal experience perspective, and then maybe weigh in on some of the things that you witnessed while you was incarcerated, dealing with women that had the same problem?
Being a mom when I was arrested, it's difficult because we don't stop being a mother just because we're incarcerated, but our families are not educated or aware of the different, I don't know, the dynamics, the importance of keeping a mother close with the family. I mean, you've got families that have a woman or a mother go to prison, and grandparents are now raising the children, and nobody reaches out and just says, "Listen, it's vital. It's so important that you keep the children. You've got to keep a relationship going." Regardless of the time that the parent's going to spend in prison, if it's a year, if it's a decade, if it's 2 decades, one day is a lot of time in a child's life. So when you don't have a family that is instrumental in keeping the children, having good communication, good contact, sending pictures, sending report cards, phone conversations, visits, all of those things to keep some kind of a connection, some kind of a bond, when you come home, there's estrangement and we're strangers. Like it's our children, but like we're strangers. And I didn't have, my children were split up when I was arrested. My son went to my father's house and my daughter went to her father's house, and neither end, they took great care of the children, but there was no make sure you're home every Monday for when your mother calls, and we're going to go see your mom for holidays. There was none of that stuff. So coming home to adult children, it was difficult. My first day of being released, my best friend from high school took me to my mom's house where my son was, and this is now a grown man. And I remember leaving the visit crying, and I asked my friend to take me back to prison.
Mm.
I was a stranger looking at my own son, great distance, standing right in front of him, great distance. And it's important. You've got to keep a connection so that when women are released from prison, they've got something that they can depend on. When you push away every aspect of life and cancel out things that are so important to us, it's hard to come home and get defeated and make mistakes and find yourself back in prison. And it's not only the incarcerated issue, it's children. These children suffer. That's their mother, whether they're in prison or not, that's their mother. And it's vital. You've got to have some kind of communication. We've got to get the Department of Corrections to recognize and get some kind of a program in place where families are contacted and reached out to, and they've got leniency on JPay visitation and visitation approval. It doesn't matter if you've got a grandmother that's a convicted felon. If this grandmother is going to bring the children to see this mother in prison, there should be exceptions. That
Right.
bond should not be lost.
And let's flush that out a little bit. What exactly, from your experience, as I was researching this, I noticed there's very few programs within the Bureau of Prisons or within state facilities that directly cater to or try to encourage or promote communication between the families that have custody or the caregivers of the children and the parents. And from your experience and your years of being incarcerated, have you noticed or have you witnessed any type of a concerted effort being made on the part of the prison industrial complex, specifically in the areas that you was in, or in general, doing anything to try and encourage what you just outlined, the need and the necessity for maintaining the communications with the parents?
Zero. Zero. In 19 years of incarceration, I never saw one thing ever pushed by the Florida Department of Corrections. The only thing that I ever saw was a volunteer organization that came in called Mommy Reads. And what they would do is they would come in and get a select group of, say, we've got 5,000 women at Lowell Correctional. They will come in and pull 35 of them and have the mothers read a book on an MP3 player on a recording. Then they take that recording and they take that book and they bring it home to the children that they're reading it to. And if the mom has 3 children, each child gets their own book. And then Mommy Reads also tries to get those children with their mothers, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. But that's it. And that's only at select prisons. And just like you said, there's not a lot of reentry for women. We just were at a women's prison 2 weeks ago, protesting outside, trying to get them not to shut it down. It's a faith-based prison for women, the last one in the state of Florida.
Mm,
It's getting shut down, and they're making it a men's facility. So
yeah. And in terms of the lack of program services and the lack of attention to the needs of the female, in particular parents, what are, from your experience, what are some of the things that the women incarcerated was doing to try to get some attention on this specific issue that's really an issue that should be have a demand behind it?
I mean, it's definitely a heavy demand. It's definitely a want. But when you are incarcerated, your hands are tied. If you've got family that doesn't understand and you have a system that doesn't care, it's putting all of the pressure on the woman that is incarcerated, trying to reach out to the family, trying to get them to understand. And keep in mind that when we go to prison, we've typically burnt bridges. We're typically not in great standing with our family, so that when we go to prison, everybody says you come to prison now, you want to do the right thing. But sometimes we're away from the vices that assisted us in making bad decisions, and we have got our priorities back in line, and we want to get our children back in our lives. And it's a lot of work and repair that has to be done. And it would take a conscious effort from not only the incarcerated woman wanting this, but the family wanting it as well, and a system supporting both sides. And it's not an impossible feat to do. I mean, it's totally plausible. I mean, if we really want to make it so we don't continue to have mass incarceration in the state of Florida and keep our recidivism rates sky high and keep that prison door swinging open, if we invest more in people and not so much in prisons, we could have a better society, because we come home. Not everyone comes home, but a lot of us come home. And when we walk out the door, I would rather have a community with healthy people than somebody that's coming home broken and heartbroken, no family support, children that are grown up now that are strangers. I mean, I've been home for 4 years, and probably can't talk much on it. I have a grown son that we're strangers, and there was nobody really tried to keep the bond going, and he was 5 when I got arrested. So it's a bad age. I mean, he was
Right,
just a young
right,
little boy, used to being with his mom all the time, and I got arrested. Nobody kept that bond going, and now he's an adult, and he says hurtful things. He's unforgiving, and it's
right.
it's because we have an unforgiving system. We have an unforgiving state. We have an unforgiving governor, and it just continues to fall down. And if
Right.
we educate people to be forgiving and support second chances, and it has to start from the family. Family support, family reunification is the most important thing
I
that
agree
anybody
with you.
can do to have us come home and be successful, because it's not easy, and having
Right.
family support is the key.
And let's I recall reading in a book that political prisoners wrote back in the '70s called "If They Come in the Morning," by Andrew Davis and other political prisoners. Andrew Davis spoke on the camaraderie that exists in prison amongst prisoners in general. And I wanna ask you, in terms of, like, we recognize that the state and the prison industrial complex don't see the need to help with family reunification or making sure that parents have access to their children. And we recognize that from what you're saying, that a lot of our family members lack education, understand the necessity to help make sure that the child or children have knowledge of their parent. But in terms of inside, what kind of support was y'all women doing in terms of helping each other deal with this traumatic experience and deal with this trauma? Can you speak on that?
We are the support system for each other. We're in there. We're not just together on Mother's Day, like the hardest day that you ever have in prison. We're there together on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Um, you're never going to see another woman ridicule somebody because they're crying over their kids. You're never going to see a woman sitting on her bunk crying alone. Somebody's going to walk over and offer comfort. That is, one of the things I say out here is it's crazy that out here in this big, beautiful world with oceans and sunshine, people don't get along with each other. We're in the darkest place in the world. We're in the worst place in the world, these prisons, and we all get along. We don't judge each other on skin color or what our crimes were or how we were raised. We all get along. It's a crazy sisterhood. I mean, I've been home for 4 years, and I fight from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed for the woman inside.
Mm-hmm.
There's a piece of me still in there. That's
Right,
how much support I got from the women inside. We always say, this is my chosen family, not the
right.
family that I was given. This is my chosen family, and I choose them because they support me and they don't judge me. And what you have in the prisons are a bunch of mommies and daughters. You don't have monsters. We're the same mother, daughter, sister, friend. We just sleep on our prison bunk. It
That's
doesn't
right.
mean we don't love our kids. We made a mistake, but we shouldn't be defined by that mistake. If we continue to judge people on a mistake that they made when they were 20, 25, 30 years old, 20 years later, we're still judging, then we're a messed up community, and we're failing as a community because we're keeping these prisons full, and prison has become big business. And if you took the cost that it costs to incarcerate one person, one individual, and threw that back into their family and supported that family, the whole economy would everything would improve. You would get children out of children and families. You would get grandparents off of Medicaid and food stamps. I mean, it's just it. A prison problem is an everybody problem, because whether we're sleeping in prison or not, I am still a part of the community.
And we recognize that the prison industrial complex benefits from this mass incarceration. But also another point that I want to flesh out is, and we recognize that women are being discriminated against, and not only do we have racism and sexism in the society. In society, but women are suffering from the same thing while they're incarcerated. Let's look at the impact of once a woman is released from prison. I was looking at some of the things that they're confronted with. Maybe you can speak to some of these things. One, you have a situation as you outlined that the mother don't know that there's a disconnect between the children and the parents because the child and growed up while the parent is incarcerated. But let's look. Let me see if you can give me some insight into this. That the caregiver, uh, when a person get out, the caregiver either immediately get a child or children to the parent or don't want to give the children up. At any rate, putting the mother under a tremendous amount of stress and trauma. Can you speak on these things from your experience or from having knowledge of it as women have suffered these things?
I would love to. As an incarcerated person, I was a law clerk. I cannot tell you, it's not just them coming home and not able to get the parent back. It's almost like as soon as we get arrested and we come into prison, um, families move forward in stripping your parental rights. And with the way the laws are in the state of Florida, it's rather easy to strip somebody's parental rights. If you're going to be sentenced to prison, anybody can walk in and you can lose custody of your child. It's so simple. And it's a very difficult thing to fight when you're an incarcerated woman relying on a law clerk to file papers for you and you going against the system because we just very rarely win. And it seems like we have a system that is more eager to terminate rights than to keep family reunification going. And I don't believe that the Florida Department of Corrections is unaware of the need to keep families together. I believe that the Florida Department of Corrections just simply doesn't care. And I don't say that easily. It's a system that I fight every day. They know what the needs are. It's constant. They know that it's not just a bunch of mommies in prison. We have a bunch of daddies in prison as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the woman always keeps the family together. The woman always takes care of everything. So when you remove a mother from a family, whether the mother went to prison for mental illness or addiction or poverty, which are the three biggest reasons why we go to prison, let's fix the problem
Right.
to keep the mommy home with the child. But instead, when the mommy goes to prison, everybody kind of comes together to separate the family. The mother comes home from prison and there's no longer a family. They take our rights away as soon as we come into prison.
Right.
It's what
Right.
happens.
And and the trauma that come out of that experience is can be even quantified. You can't even measure it in terms of the impact that it has on society. Because
No,
these same children that are suffering from that not having a relationship with their parent, in this case the mother, oftentimes grow up and become a product of the system and subsequently part of the prison industrial complex
right.
and therefore the chattel that's keeping this thing alive. Let's talk about uh, the parole and what their role be in terms of either aiding the parent in having a relationship with their children or interfering with that. Can you speak on that?
Parole.
Yeah, if a parent is if a mother don't have custody of their child and or if the caregiver got custody of the child, is there any prohibition? Do the parole system put up any prohibition from the parent, to your knowledge, from having access to their children?
No, not at all. In fact, the parole was abolished in the mid '90s. So the parole board that we have currently, FCOR, is only for the people that were sentenced 25 years. I mean, everyone that's in prison right now that's parole eligible they've done at least 25 years. And when I go sit on the parole hearings, family reunification contact, that's not anything that's ever discussed. It's a few everybody together has 15 minutes to speak to try to get somebody released. And if there's a victim involved, that kind of takes up the majority of the meeting. So there's really nothing that is in place. Even in fact, when you were released from the Florida Department of Corrections, you go through like a transition class for the last few weeks of your incarceration. And they want to teach you meager things that most people already know. How to do a resume, get a checking account, things like that. There's nothing taught, spoken of, mentioned about family reunification. And if even if you if you relax on it the entire time that we were incarcerated, now that we're getting ready to walk out the door, maybe some tips or some guidelines or some help or some resources. Like, this is your last chance to get something in there, and there is absolutely nothing. There's nothing.
Why
Nothing is.
why you think that why you think that and we both agree. I did 48 years prior to being released from prison, and my family was there in terms of supporting me. But at the same token, when I got out, it was a disconnect because basically the long term. But why do you think that family unification and building of relationships or maintain or helping people develop relationship or reconnect with their family, why do you think this is not something that the prison industrial complex even look at? Like you just said, I'm coming home on all parole. They tell me I have to have a place to stay, but yet they don't tell me to try to have a social system that allow me to be able to reacclimate myself back in society, which would be my family. Why do you think this is the case?
My personal opinion, I mean, that they would be getting rid of the food that feeds them. It's big business. They have to have that door swinging open. If you set us up for success, we are going to come home and be successful. And I'm not coming back to prison. And that's one empty bed. So if they support all of us and we all have family reunification and we all get tools placed in our hand to come home and be successful, that prison door is going to close and that big business is going to fall. And that is not something that they want to see.
Right,
Lives don't matter as much as their big business does, and that's the concern. I mean,
right,
it's I could tell you, I mean, you've done my time plus plus plus. They've gotten rid of any and all good programs that we ever had.
right,
So many volunteers have come inside the system because people that were paid to teach and to praise and to train, all of those systems, all of those programs have been cut and they're just no longer offered. And contrary to what the Florida Department of Corrections says, there's a very few people, very few numbers in the population, people that are actually in educational programs. You can't even get into a program if you have more than 5 years to do because they
right,
feel like they're wasting their time. So again, all of these tools with family reunification would be number one.
right,
They I feel like the system, they are hoping that I come home and fail because they want me to come back, keep
right.
that big business going. They don't want me to come home and be successful. And I don't just again say that loosely. No tools were placed in my hand. I was given a bus ticket and $50 on a JPay card. And that's it.
Yeah. And let me ask you this here. Let's look at some of the things that if you had the ability to uh, implement policies and procedures around family reunification, what do you think? What would be that you think that the prison industrial complex could do to reverse this system that we're talking about now, where family reunification is not even on the radar? What would be your recommendations?
Oh my gosh. I tell everybody that if I ever won a lottery, state of Florida would be changed. Because I would do what the white privilege in the state of Florida does and throw their money around. I would be throwing the money around. I feel like, first of all, I would want to lower my numbers of incarcerated people. Second of all, anybody that came into prison, it would be such an easy thing. Have somebody come around to everybody new in the prison system, get their whole rundown with their family, their children, how old are their children, when's the last time you saw your children, where are your children, get the whole family makeup, and then have certain counselors that just focus on that and build relationships. You can have somebody from the prison reach out to the families and just say, hi, I'm Deborah's classification officer, and I know that you're raising her two children, and we want to work together and try to, keep this family put together. Maybe you could just send some schoolwork every Wednesday. Maybe you have the kids home every Monday when she calls for 15 minutes. Something, slow little baby steps. I mean, it wouldn't be difficult.
That's right.
It wouldn't be difficult. Instead, we have a system that they just removed mail. So you can no
Yeah,
longer eat colorings from your children in pictures.
that's right.
They just stopped it where we can't send money in to
That's
friends
right.
anymore unless we're on their approved visitation list. And it's just the system is continuing to do things to separate us, not just from our families, but from society.
That's right.
And It doesn't matter what we speak up and say by the hundreds and by the thousands. The system does what the system wants to do. That's why I fight the system, and we have to shut it down.
And you know what? What you just outlined, I guess because it would cost so much money to have a case manager in a case management system go around and build them type of relationship. I guess because it would cost take away so much money from the security and so much money from the overtime that it's virtually impossible to implement. But Deborah, what's your last words on this before we close out? And give us your contact information again, please.
Okay, and I would say it's to reflect on what you just said, where it would be cost efficient. I mean, they just tried to get out a $3 billion budget to build new mega prisons, so they could employ whoever they wanted to employ. But if money was a matter, I assure you, I could have volunteers going into every single prison in the state of Florida on however many days they wanted, however many volunteers it took. We have that many people out here that care about the system. We could provide the volunteers. It wouldn't cost them a dollar. They're just never going to allow it. For closing words, second chances. I've never met a person that's not made a mistake. Everybody's been given a second chance. It doesn't matter if you ran over your neighbor's cat and they forgave you, or you got a speeding ticket and the cops said, never mind. Everybody's been given a second chance, and we are still people. We made a mistake. Our price to pay was to be removed from society. We were removed from society. When we come home, don't continue to judge us. It's almost impossible to get a job, when in fact, an incarcerated person, when we come home, we're your best worker because we are used to working for free. So just support people, believe in people, invest in people, don't invest in prisons, and don't just vote for who your neighbor's voting for. Don't vote for somebody unless they believe in second chances. We have a website. It's called changecomes.now.fl.org. And my phone number is on there. The entire state of Florida has my phone number. 561-507-3690. My email is also on the website, changecomesnowfl.org. We fight the system.
Yes, that's right. Fight the powers to be. Thank you, Deborah. This was very enlightening. And we encourage everyone to support Deborah and the brothers and sisters in Florida as they continue to fight the powers, fight the prison industrial complex and mass incarceration. But more importantly, we encourage you to take note of what she said earlier, that family reunification is the number one issue in prison and prison reform. If we're talking about changing this narrative, then the narrative starts with changing the way the prison industrial complex relates to our families and deal with our families. I'm Mansa Musa, and before I close, I want to let everybody know that Eddie Conway is recovering. Eddie Conway is doing good. He's up. He's more vibrant now, and we look forward to him returning to this station right here and being the person that we know and the person that we love. I'm Mansa Musa. Now you have the real news about the prison industrial complex as was given by Deborah, and we encourage everyone to support this effort that's being made. But more importantly, we ask you to continue to support Rattling the Bars and the real news. Thank you very much.